Hello and welcome. This is just a quick video out testing GS 1200 fitted with the new Michelin Anakee Wilds. It's just riding along some green lanes outside Leamington Spa in Warwickshire. It's just a lane that we do quite often. Not too technical, just kind of nice and flowing. Muddy because it's quite enclosed. And this was just limbering up. It's an R1200 GS 2014 model. Bought just over a year ago as an ex-training school bike, hence why I'm not as fussy about getting it used like this. Previously fitted with TKC 80s and now fitted with the Anakee Wild, which had been on for about 200 miles. Yeah, the bike gets dropped quite a bit. I'm not too precious about it. It's got some decent crash protection on it. These bikes are pretty good off-road. For everything people might say about it being too big and too heavy, which it is at times, such as now, they are actually a very agile and very well-balanced bike, and with a bit of practice and technique, not that I've got a lot of it, they can be ridden quite aggressively off-road, and especially with the tyres. I mean, the tyres make a huge difference to the bike. If you tried riding these roads on these sort of trails on a standard road rubber, you just won't get anywhere. Equally, the Continental TKC 70s, which are a good road tyre with a little bit of off-road grip, but certainly not for these conditions. What you find with the big bikes is because of the weight, they're okay as long as the wet or muddy surface is flat. But as soon as you camber to it, it just loses traction. It just sort of slips down into the gully, into the trench, slips on the mud, and then you always find the front ends washing away. What's very noticeable about these new Anakee Wilds is a lot more side grip and side bite. You can see that as soon as you get the tyres fitted. The blocks come right to the edge of the tyre. The blocks feel a lot softer rubber as well than they do on the TKC 80s. The TKC 80s have been a good tyre when I've had them on previously. You can't really fault them apart from when it's wet and muddy, and then you just don't have that much confidence in the front. And yeah, I was really keen to get these Wilds on the bike. As you can see from the screen, last year I did Route 66 and shipped this bike flew it into Las Vegas, and then spent 6,000 miles and 5 weeks touring around America, and then eventually boating it out of New York. It was a good trip. On that trip, I ran it with the TKC 70s, which again are a great road tyre. There were two of us up, lots of luggage, camping gear. And I think that, for me, is why this bike is such a good all-rounder, and I hated to admit it. I was like everyone else. I didn't want to like the GS, but once I'd ridden one, realised how good it was on-road, off-road, as a tourer. It's just hard to fault the fact that this bike went across America two up, fully loaded, plenty of gear, in perfect comfort, with cruise control, heated grips and electronic suspension, and then you get it home and you put a new set of tyres on and you can do this sort of thing. Obviously, there's a lot of nerves initially, and it takes a bit of practice, and it takes quite a few falls to get to a point where you feel even remotely comfortable to do these sort of trails. And what you find about the GS, above all the other 1200s, is just how well balanced it is, with the weight so low down, with the way the cylinders are configured. It's just a well balanced bike. The Triumph Explorer 1200. It's just too top heavy for this sort of thing. Equally, the Tenere, it just doesn't have that agility and, I think, feedback that you get from the GS. As I say, the GS is a good off-road bike. The problem you find is in these sort of rutted conditions where the cylinders will just crash into the ruts and get you stuck there. So it can lead you to some pretty tricky situations. Yeah, I like the bike. I mean, to be honest, I can't afford the bike if I'm honest, and I really should be treating it better than this and worrying about its resale value. But having bought it as an ex-Si Pavey bike, then as an off-road training school bike, it had already been knocked around a little bit. It had already taken the most of its value, top-end value off it. So I'm hoping this is a kind of a cost-neutral exercise. And they do crash pretty well. I think that's the important thing about them. If you put some decent crash protection, these are Alt Rider, the American company that make decent crash bars for them. Put that on and I can drop this. I can drop this on this terrain, which I have many times. I don't see any sort of kickback from that. So all in all, it's a good bike, and made better with these tyres. I must say they were a bit noisy on the road, these Anakee Wilds, probably too noisy for the road, and I think longevity-wise, we're only going to looking at 2,500 miles, but it does allow you to ride the bike off-road with a lot more aggression than you usually would, and so in that regard, really impressed with the tyre, really impressed. And this is running standard road pressures. I've not deflated them at all for the conditions, mainly because I'll jump back on the road and I don't want to squidge along on a soft tyre. So yeah, that's it. That's early impressions of the Anakee Wilds. Good tyres, mated to a good bike. Just as an aside from the GS, I've also been out on the new Africa Twin on these same lanes. It was a DCT model fitted with Continental TKC 80s. I was testing it for Motorcycle Sport and Leisure magazine with that review to come out in the next issue or so. But I was generally impressed with the bike. Obviously, on these lanes, you can notice it does feel a lot lighter, slimmer, and more agile than the GS. I know the on-paper weights are very similar, and people have said it's too heavy, but off the stand and then once riding and pulling it around, the bike feels a lot lighter. It feels a lot lower and slimmer as well. And obviously with a regular suspension rather than the telelever, it does ride the bumps a lot smoother than the GS, especially the front end. There's more absorbency. It doesn't crash quite so much, and it doesn't feel to have the same amount of weight around the front end. So definitely as a novice or learner off-roader, it's going to be a lot easier. And I think you could also push on and gain a lot more speed on the Africa Twin. So in that regard, it is much more of an off-road bike. It's also good on the road. There is enough power, plenty of power. The DCT I wasn't keen on. It's just not something I like. I like a clutch, especially off-road. But it does have its merits for somebody who just wants a nice trail bike to ride without too much input of their own. I don't like the fact that DCT changes gears for you and things like that, and then doing tight technical stuff off-road. For me, you need a clutch. But in these sort of conditions, yeah, the Africa Twin was good. I let down a little bit by some of the detailing on it. Even some, like the way that the screen fixes and the way the screws mount, and the fact that spokes were corroding after 1,500 miles, and a few of the little bits and bobs on it which I don't think are quite perfect, but hopefully they'll either smooth out or improve as the model gets upgraded. So all in all, a very different bike to the GS, not really a direct comparison to it. And I came into the test wondering whether I'd swap the GS for an Africa Twin, and the conclusion was that I wouldn't, simply because the GS is such a good road bike, such a good tourer, plus it can do the off-roading. Whereas the compromise with the Africa Twin is that it's not as good as a road bike, not as good as touring, well, two-up especially. And for the gains in the off-road, I didn't think it was enough, but still a great bike, and it's still definitely a step in the right direction for the adventure market.